Shake and Bacon. My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So carnivore is a relatively new way of eating for people. So I do find it weird when people like to get on a bandwagon and go on about how this new carnivore trend is not very good for you, or it's something that's kind of silly to do. The reason why these trends exist is people are trying to troubleshoot because carnivore has only gotten them so far. And they've been trying to do carnivore for maybe weight loss or better health. And it's only gotten them to a certain point and they're at a stall. And maybe they've been at a stall for, I don't know, a month. Maybe they've been at a stall for 6 months, or in my case, I was at a stall for over a year. And some people have been at stalls even longer than that. I've heard of some people having a stall for 2 or 2.5 years doing incredibly strict carnivore. If some people are trying something that's still a carnivore diet, but a different way of maybe messing with their ratios, it shows that they have some curiosity, for one. They want to see if it helps them to feel good. So they want to try and troubleshoot to see if they can feel even better. So they're doing a carnivore diet to feel better. And they found that maybe doing a high-fat version of carnivore or a leaner version of carnivore is something that seems to help them. And maybe the benefits weren't worth it, but they noticed some good and bad results from that. But some people are doing it because they've just been stuck and they're only feeling so good. And they've heard about these miraculous results other people have gotten doing the carnivore diet, but they can't really fall back on any science because there's hardly any science out there about a carnivore diet. So they're going by what other more experienced carnivores have said. And most of these trends have come from not just carnivore influencers, but carnivores who have been doing carnivore for a long time. This high fat 80-20 ratio that was happening more in the last year or two really kicked off with Dr. Lisa Wiederman and Kelly Hogan, two long-term carnivores who are trying to troubleshoot different ways of doing carnivore for their own clients because they do carnivore coaching. They're helping people in the carnivore community. These are the people who pioneered carnivore for us. The rest of us that have been doing it for maybe a few years tops. So these are the people that have been doing it for like 10, 15 plus years, some of them even longer than that. So if they're starting these trends, first and foremost, they're getting this information from medical experts in the field. So when they turn around and say, hey, we know lots of you out there have been having trouble with, say, weight loss, or you're just not feeling too well and you're trying to troubleshoot your weight stall. Well, maybe you've yo-yo dieted through the years, or maybe it's because you've had children and you've just been unhealthy long enough. Any of those one reasons is enough. Some people have a combination of those reasons or all of those reasons why they've maybe hit a weight plateau, and they're being responsible coaches. And they're recommending it not for the everyday person doing carnivore. They're recommending it for other people who are struggling to stick to a carnivore diet because they're not getting the results that they once were getting and they've just plateaued. And that could be their body healing. But these long-term carnivores are trying to understand why that is. So they're consulting doctors out there in the medical community, everybody from Dr. Boz to Dr. Ken Berry, people who had a lot of experience on the medical side of carnivore and high-fat versions of basically a carnivore diet or low carbohydrate diet. And they're trying to understand what could be causing these stalls. And they're passing it down to us. Now, that's a wonderful place to be because they're giving people, they don't have to do that. They could just give it to their restricted group of people that they're coaching and say, this, keep it within these walls because no one else is paying for this information that I have to pay for because I'm trying to understand and get better as a coach. They're not doing that. They're passing it out to everybody in the carnivore community. Maybe we don't need as much protein as we thought we did. Fair enough. And I think a lot of people who tried this carnivore way of eating at a high-fat version of carnivore or doing a sardine challenge or different ways of carnivore with intermittent fasting or feeding windows or long-term fasting, they've been doing these things maybe sometimes out of curiosity. Maybe it's because they are just trying to break a stall. And sometimes they figure it out early on, and other times they have to keep trying different things. So after doing carnivore for well over a year, I had a long weight stall. And I'm a big enough guy that having a weight stall when you're overweight by like 80 pounds isn't a healthy thing, especially with my health history. So I wanted to get past this weight stall. I didn't mind the weight stall because I was still getting other health benefits on a carnivore diet during that weight stall. So it didn't bother me. My waist was still going down slowly. I was still getting better numbers with my blood work and all my testing I was doing with my doctors. So the problem was that stopped as well. And I was just plateauing on all levels. And so it's time to troubleshoot. So when people are starting to do these different things, these different ways of eating carnivore, maybe you haven't struggled with that. Maybe carnivore was an easy road for you as far as your weight loss journey went, or as far as your health journey went, and you didn't have to try to troubleshoot to the degree that these other people are trying to troubleshoot. Maybe you only had to lose 80 pounds or 100 pounds. Some people out there are trying to lose 200 or 300 pounds. Some people out there are trying to struggle with their mental illness, and it's only gotten them so far, and they're trying to figure out how much better they could do on a carnivore diet if they tweak it here or there. So you have to keep in mind, even some of these influencers out there that are getting frustrated by this, they've experimented with some of these things, and maybe they haven't, but it's cool if they have. I used to work with a personal trainer, and it was really interesting because he tried almost every exercise routine and program out there just to experience it, just so he could give his M=1 answer to what he thought that was. He went into it sometime with a preconceived notion, and then there's other things he wouldn't try. But for the most part, he tried pretty much everything. And the same with diet. And for him, he thought a calories in versus calories out was the ultimate way to go. It was consistent, it was easy, but that tends to work easily for people who are already in shape. If someone's out of shape, it doesn't always work as easy or as well. The cool thing was he was open-minded to trying these things so he could understand it and pass that information, for better or worse, on to the people he was coaching. And the same thing applies when people are doing this with a carnivore diet. The average Joe who's doing this and regular carnivore works well for them, well, maybe they shouldn't worry about this yet. Maybe they can start toying with things like that further down the carnivore journey, and right now just focus on doing regular carnivore until they're old hat with it. But in the meantime, there's other people like myself who hit plateaus, and we were looking to some of these long-term carnivores if they could offer any suggestions or answers, because as Kelly Hogan would say, for years and years in the carnivore world, they would just say, your body's just healing, just give it time. But how much time do you give it, and what kind of healing needs to be done? So now these long-term carnivores are saying, okay, go and get tested. Get tested to find out what the problem is. In my case, I still had high fasting insulin after 2.5 years on a strict carnivore diet. Without a lick, taste, or bite of anything off a carnivore diet, I still had high insulin issues. So it seems to be more under control now because I have been losing weight again, but I had to do lots of different things to make that happen. And I'm glad I did, because it helped me to understand different ways to do carnivore. And it's allowed me to pass my knowledge on to other people who are just learning carnivore or are having difficulties themselves. And I like the idea that people can help each other out there in the carnivore world. You have to experiment with something, not just know about it on paper so you can shrug your shoulders at it and go, don't waste your time. You have to understand why people are coming at something from a particular angle. Regular, straightforward nutrition and exercise is good for most people, but that's good depending on the health problems. And you might have a large knowledge base in nutrition or exercise physiology, but if you don't have a wide knowledge base in pathologies, like what the health problem is and how to treat it through nutrition, it's a totally different way of handling things. And there's other doctors out there like Dr. Elizabeth Bright, who does focus on that. I haven't even gotten to the point where I've seen Dr. Elizabeth Bright personally for any sort of consultation, but just applying what I learned from her videos has helped my health dramatically. It has helped as substantially on its own in the last few months as carnivore did in the last 2 years before that. I mean, we have to break this down. My allergies and adrenal gland issues and my hypothyroidism has gotten dramatically better just by paying attention to what she suggested, which was doing a high-fat version of carnivore for a long window of time. And I did that. There are good things and bad things that happen from that. So the point of this is, don't look down on other people who are doing different trends out there. The trends are there for a reason, because once you start getting frustrated at those people who are trying to troubleshoot, you're just as bad as the people who are out there criticizing a carnivore diet, because the people who are doing a carnivore diet are troubleshooting their diet because everything else they've tried hasn't worked. And they got moderate success on a carnivore diet, better than anything else they've done, but they need to go further with it. And as soon as you criticize them and make them feel bad for doing that, you're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem. So we want to try and work with each other out there. We don't want to try and bash each other out there. So there's a large portion of people out there who needed to try doing troubleshooting to their carnivore way of eating. And I think it's important that we all support each other through that. Help them to understand for themselves whether it helps or hurts. Maybe it's going to solve one problem, but create another 3. So what I'm getting at is I feel like we need a little less judgment out there in the carnivore community, a little more patience and understanding, and we don't need to be so critical of each other. We need to help each other. Thanks a lot and take care.